a disaster for him, for Kennedy. You know, it was like I'm the new kid on the block. He also told me that he wanted all Berlin, which, you know, World War II wasn't that far away from 1960. We're talking 15 years, most. And no one forgot it, and Kennedy fought in it. And he got on television when he came home and said, "Americans, are you willing to go to war for Berlin?" And we said yes. So Khrushchev backed off of that. But Berlin had been separated, spoils of war, into 4 sectors. But they wanted it all. No, that wasn't going to happen. So that was one problem. But that problem in Berlin was going on the same time we had the Cuban Missile Crisis going on. So now he's thinking, oh, great, the Soviets have missiles 90 miles off our coast. So if I do this, what's Khrushchev going to do in Berlin? It was like he had to be thinking of all those what ifs. So again, we'll do the Cuban Missile Crisis. You'll get to see a great movie today on that. He had tapes. He was taping, and of course, going through the Nixon era, I'm like, oh no, the tape. But he was taping as a journalist. That's what he was, a journalist, and he wanted to be a history teacher and a journalist, and he was going to write his own memoirs. So you'll get to hear all the voices for the Cuban Missile Crisis, what they were talking about, which I always wanted to know. I was an 8th grader and said, what is going on? Because we're on the brink of nuclear war, and that was the truth. We were on the brink. So Vietnam, recently, within the past few years, Kennedy, October '63, had written, I don't know, it wasn't a bill, like a memo. It was a memo that said we will not, be staying in Vietnam. We won't put in combat troops. We'll have them in there, to assist the Vietnamese. And he was pulling out after the '64 election. That's what he was going to do. He saw it was a no-win. He was there in '52 with Bobby Kennedy, and it was like a no-win. They went over to France. De Gaulle, who we know, since the French were there and lost, like it's a no-win, don't go. So it wouldn't have blown up into what it was. And as Kennedy was laying in state in the Capitol, Johnson turned that, it wasn't a memo, I can't remember what he called it, but it was turned around, and Johnson, he listened to the generals. Kennedy was not listening to the generals because of the Bay of Pigs. That was a disaster. He listened to the generals, he listened to the CIA, and he just wasn't doing that again. And so anyway, of course, President Johnson did listen and turned that whole thing around. They sent in our troops. That's when it started.
The generals for the